Caitlin Huey-Burns is joining us now from Real Clear Politics to talk about all this. Caitlin, you know, this is interesting that he's arriving there, and the first question that he's asked by reporters is about the wall. He's been not very specific up until this weekend about his immigration policy. Now he says he has a plan. He's sort of given some idea of what that will look like. What do you think of it?
Well, it is certainly a sign that he's taking this campaign seriously. We're seeing him starting to organize in Iowa, the first early caucus state. He traveled there, did all the, the quintessential presidential campaign stops, and he's been pressed over the last several weeks to detail his immigration plan. There are 17 candidates, including Trump, running for president. Not all of them have really been specific on policy. A lot of this has been politics, campaigning, introducing themselves. So Trump is really one of the first and kind of a small group to really get down on policy details. Now, whether these are realistic, they'll be vetted and tested and all sorts of things. The wall that he's proposed is obviously very controversial, so we'll see what comes of it. But I take it as a sign that he's serious about this campaign, at least through the early states.
How much does this really matter to voters at this point, to get these specifics from him?
Well, it matters in terms of for Trump, because he has been talking about immigration in some controversial way, of course, too. But he's been talking about that he will eventually release policy. He'll eventually release some specifics. So it is a, it speaks to that. Voters at this time, though, are really still getting to know these candidates. Trump, however, is very different because everybody knows who he is. So now it's time to get down to what he would actually do.
Caitlin, on Saturday, Mr. Trump said he's willing to spend $1 billion to become president of the United States. That's almost $300 million more than President Obama. Does that give him an edge in that he's not beholden to any special interest groups, or does that taint the election, making people think that you can just buy the presidency?
Well, all of these candidates are raising extraordinary amounts of money, really. I mean, Jeb Bush, his super PAC has raised a lot of money. All of these candidates, money is going to be a very big part of this race. Donald Trump is signaling that he can stay in this race as long as he wants, really. That money is not an issue, that he's not really collecting it from special interests, even though, we'll see about that. What's interesting about Trump, though, is that he hasn't really had to spend a lot of money on his campaign. He has had a lot of free media. He's done interviews, several interviews virtually every day for the last several weeks, and he hasn't really had to spend much money on air, on other things that campaigns have had to do.
Caitlin, let me ask you about the polls. We just had that graphic up that showed where everyone was numbers-wise, and when you look at who's in the lead, you've got Donald Trump, you've got Ben Carson, you've got other people towards the top of the pack here. Ted Cruz, Carly Fiorina, some would say she acquitted herself quite well during that forum. What does that tell us about the mind of the Republican primary voter at this point?
Well, it tells us that the Republican primary voters are craving outsiders. It's a very large field full of current and former governors, current and former senators, but what the Republican primary voters are telling us in these polls is that they're interested in the non-politician. Fiorina is surging, certainly. Ben Carson, the neurosurgeon, has been ahead in these polls for really since the beginning of the campaign. And then you see people like Jeb Bush, Scott Walker, Marco Rubio kind of falling towards the bottom of the pack now. So it is signaling that they're interested in these outsider candidates. Whether they will maintain that interest, whether that will last beyond the summer into the fall, into the winter when the voting starts, remains to be seen. But right now it's signaling these are the kinds of candidates we want.
Before we let you go, Hillary Clinton was there this weekend sampling some of the food. How'd she do?
Well, she, mingled with the crowd. She did all the kind of the state fair things. She did not speak on that iconic soapbox that all the other candidates did. And she said that she's not asked about the emails from voters, and that's pretty controversial because
she joked about Snapchat.
She joked about it, right? And that kind of sent not the right message, really, because this is a serious issue. This is being investigated. By brushing it off, it just sends the wrong message.
All right, Caitlin Huey-Burns from Real Clear Politics. Thank you so much.
Thank you.